Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Volus?
Abstain.
Mr. McLeister?
Yes.
Mr. Fleckner?
Abstain.
So because you don't have the sufficient number, you have to move that for the next meeting to approve it.
Okay.
Right.
So those minutes will be moved to the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay. All right, then the next item is a discussion of the Main Street Business District. Tim or Pat, do you want to?
I'm going to go get those maps.
Okay.
You guys. Yeah, pass those on. Do you have this in your packets? I got big maps for you.
I have the reduced size.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big one.
Bear with us a minute. Excuse me.
So I obtained a large size map for each board member to have to take with them, so I don't know how you want to do this tonight. If you want to just look at one, I can.
What are you looking for us to do tonight?
Well, I think what the board has to do is adopt this map.
But I think,
And what's been changed on the map, if you look at your map, I'm going to go put this one, oh, you got one down there too? Great. Yes. Is the purple area is designating what the Main Street Business District is based on what City Council based on what City Council has asked the board to consider as the defined area. And we believe that the Main Street Business District was established in the code a number of years back, and we believe that over the years, I think you can recall instances where applicants have come here and said that we're in the Main Street Business District, we need help, and when you would respond, well, where exactly is that? Because we don't have a map that shows where you are at on the Main Street Business District. So we took those things together from what council had passed and came up with this map of the Main Street Business District in the purple, the dark purple. And essentially it represents parcels, and I looked at them personally, every one of them, along with our chief building. I looked at each one of these parcels personally, along with the chief building official, and what we were looking at were parcels that were less than 1 1/4 acre in size, that faced issues with various things. They don't have this frontage along Main Street, the setback requirements for signage, for lighting, parking, but parcels that were bigger than that. In looking at them, we felt, you know what, that parcel is bigger, that they could adopt our sign language and be okay with it. They wouldn't have to give up something, or they would have parking available. So we didn't think like, even though that the Acme and the Kmart properties are on Main Street, but we didn't feel that they, at the size that they were, would really fit the requirements that council was looking for to try to come up with a way to make businesses more desirable to locate on Main Street, or even make it possible. So we needed to bring that map back to the Planning Commission so that they could approve that this is the map for the Main Street Business District.
And I asked Tim, is this something that should be, since we're amending the zoning map, would qualify as a public hearing? So
Right, and the notice
should we
went
set-
out as a public, and I agree that, I think you're asking, should those from the public that wish to speak?
Well, we don't need to advertise it as a public, like we've done the
Yeah.
other 3 items on the agenda?
Well,
Not to delay this another meeting, but, you know, are we getting ourselves in a bind if we
well,
deal with it tonight? And
yeah, it should be advertised as a public meeting.
so,
And if this notice says the planning commission scheduled a public hearing and adjudication hearing,
okay,
if that's how it went out, I think it's sufficient because
all right, so
the
that would
first thing on
classify
there
as a,
states
okay.
that it's gonna be
So
discussion
we have
and
duly
adoption.
advertised it as a public hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
So you
good.
absolutely, I think you'd wanna take comments from the
Yes,
public.
yes.
And perhaps go in that order, because as you said on the agenda, the adjudication hearing, it applies simply to the conditional use application, which is 807-18 SP. It doesn't apply to the second item that will be here, proposed site plan.
Okay. All right, let me ask a couple questions first. You didn't, all the parcels that have been designated as Main Street District, in the Main Street District, Business District, were they all zoned GBA or GBB?
When we were looking at the parcels, we weren't looking so much as to how they were, if they were GBA or GBB. We were looking at the size of the lots, because the size of the lots is what is creating the problem
Right.
for location on Main Street District, not whether it's a GBA or GBB. It's, I have a parcel, it's the 1814 plat, they're 75 feet wide, 140 feet deep, and it isn't buildable, it isn't developable. How can we get some relief from some of the requirements? So to answer your question then again, it was really looking at the size of the parcels.
And I guess we need, Tim, if you could review the language of the Main Street Business District. I mean, are we not in essence changing the zoning of a parcel that might be RMFB or RMFA? By just taking it because it's a small, under an acre and a quarter, acre and a half? You follow me?
Yes, and I'm going by memory here. I'm gonna look for it specifically, but my understanding is the purpose of the Main Street Business District is to recognize those parcels that are essentially landlocked and then have, or don't have the ability to expand unless there's new construction, because the setbacks may not be deep enough, the parking may not be sufficient. So essentially what the Main Street Business District is permits the Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, just some discretion, saying the other ones for the business districts, GBA, GBB, those numbers where they say this number of parking spots, this type of setback, those are hard and fast rules, and to deviate from that require a variance. If you're located within the Main Street Business District, it permits reasonable discretion from Planning Commission, the zoning board of appeals. And in that reasonable discretion you're looking at, is this something that, based upon kind of the size of the lot, the structure that's already there, this is a reasonable deviation from those rules?
Okay, so that, and I think we're accomplishing that anyhow. We're changing the map. We have a public hearing. It will be now and forever after Main Street business zoning rather than GBA, GBB, or
I would disagree.
Huh?
I disagree with that. So I just throwing that out there, and I'm going to certainly defer to the law director, but I don't think we're eliminating the GBA or GBB class.
No, on these parcels.
On those parcels, they're still GBA and GBB, but they are entitled to certain reasonable discretion from the GBA and GBB zoning rules, but they're still GBA and GBB.
Okay, so if there's a parcel that might have been RMFB.
We're not changing the zoning on any parcel.
So you cannot put a business on there, but whatever, you can put what's permitted in the RMFB or A on there, but you have the flexibility as defined in the Main Street Business District.
And certainly if there was, these other classifications and those buildings were torn down and the site was going to be redeveloped, they wanted to change the zoning to GBB, then,
that would be a zone change.
Then that would be a zone change.
Okay, just so everybody's clear what we're doing, do we have a map that shows what, will we retain a map that shows what it was zoned prior to our establishing it as a Main Street Business District?
We retain all of our maps.
Okay.
From however far back.
Okay, so that application permit comes into John, he knows that it's a GBA, GBB, OB, RMFA, RMFB, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and we don't exclusively rely on the map to make that. We have other documents that are in files that we really should be relying on rather than the map.
Okay. Any other questions of the commission before I allow the public to speak first? Anyone in the audience want to speak on this issue? Yes, sir.
Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. Number one, this agenda is highly, highly inadequate. And if this is the announcement that went out, I think you need to table what you're doing and start over. I've even asked some commission members what's going to be included in a public hearing and what items weren't. You say up above in your title, public hearing and adjudication hearing, and down below all you show is items for adjudication. The public doesn't even know what adjudication is. They certainly understand what a public hearing is, and that might catch their attention and maybe mean something to them, and they might look at this closer. So this agenda just doesn't cut it. Number two, regarding your plan, all these businesses along Main Street back right up to residential property. So to bend over backwards and do away with this parking requirement or this setback requirement is not fair to all these residences that back right up to these lots along Main Street. Plus, I think you need to be able to go one by one. And Mr. Fleckner, I applaud you for your questions. Asking, well, which ones are GBA, which ones are GBB, which ones are RMFA and B? I think you should know every single lot. Maybe have a spreadsheet to show which ones are going to be impacted under this Main Street business. I think you should detail what items are going to be relaxing. Are you going to allow an area that only has maybe 5 or 10 parking spots to cram in a few extra cars. This is all wrong. This is wrong. And it's clear that you're not prepared. It hasn't been thoroughly vetted and researched. And I just think this is a very poor way for the city of North Canton's zoning board or planning commission to proceed in this manner. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Tack, and I am here on behalf Rebecca Tack, on behalf of TRE Properties, a business owner on this strip of property. And I feel the need to stand up and say that I really commend you for kind of doing this, because these small businesses, I understand the things that you're trying to allow. And I think it's a great idea, because the business that I have is directly onto the sidewalk almost. So for us to put a sign there, it would have to be on the direct front of a building, which is very hard for anyone to read. Our parking is in the back, but I understand what you're saying about the size of the building or what the business is operating as, and such as how many parking spaces you need for that business and things like that. But I would like to commend you on it, because I think it's a great idea to attract business to the area. And I just think it's wonderful that you're allowing these small things to happen regardless of the zoning, because I know, especially with my business, it's not affecting any property other than mine or anything behind it. We actually enter from an alley behind our business. We cannot enter from Main Street itself. So I'd just like to say thank you for doing so.
Would you repeat the name of your business, please?
The business, we own TRE Properties,
Okay, and what's your address?
616 South Main.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Melanie J. Roll, 308 Porty Street. I'd like some clarification. I'm not still certain whether tonight is the public hearing for the business district, or whether you're going to go and advertise it and have a public hearing at another date.
Tonight is the public hearing for the Main Street Business District.
Was
Yes.
it advertised?
Advertised, yeah. The North Canton Planning Commission has scheduled a public hearing and adjudication hearing, and one of the items listed under the public hearing part is discussion and adoption of the Main Street Business District map.
It was advertised in the newspaper.
Yes.
Correct. And that's what
Okay.
Mr. Fox has indicated.
It wasn't clear whether this was the public hearing for that, or it was the public hearing for something else. So it
Okay.
was somewhat confusing.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name's Dominic Fonte. I live at 965 Fair Oaks Avenue Southwest, North Canton, Ohio. I'm also a real estate agent for 30 years. I know most of you people, and I'm also a city council. This is real important to me, because what's frustrating to me as I sit up here on council is our hands are always tied, and the game has changed. We have to be prepared for the changes that are coming. Do we want to be leaders, followers, or we want to get out of the way? So this is giving you the opportunity, from your standpoint, to have latitude and longitude to be able to make decisions on these unusual pieces of property. I mean, you have old real estate, and there's people that want to run small businesses, and we need to work with them. They're our partners. And so if you look at the United States, most of the revenue is made up of small independent businesses. So we want to give them tools, and it was so frustrating for me sitting up here, and this has been established since '03. And it's just sat stagnant for all this time. So now we come up with a plan that gives you guys the latitude and longitude to figure out a way to kind of make exceptions here and there so that we can get these businesses going. Because like I said, as things shift, the millennial market is 50% of the buying market, and people want to live in these houses close to downtowns, and they want to walk, and they want things to do. So by you guys doing this, this gives you the opportunity now that we can start doing some fun things, like PAVs, for example. You know, I mean, PAVs almost didn't happen because of the red tape and the rules and the regulations, because we're trying to retrofit an old piece of real estate with some new ideas. And it's been many things over the years. So the question I have, as a citizen, as a council member, as a real estate agent, as a person, people need to make some changes. Changes are difficult. And you have power and control now where you now have some wiggle room. And that's what I'm really looking for, wiggle room. So I support this business, and I think from north to south, I don't know, GBA, general business, office, it doesn't really matter to me. It's on the main drag. It should be some business entity, and we want to have quality stuff in our town. When you walk the paths, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure it's probably one of the happiest little spots. Has anybody been there yet? And then you got Starbucks. Yeah, I just say we want to see more of it. I beat the beat every day, and this is what people want. The majority of the people, they want things to do in North Canton. We have all our bases covered with. We have safety, we have clean, we have convenience, we have the airport, we have the expressway, we have good real estate. I mean, everything is in place. We have the parks now getting dialed in, the roads are dialed in. So all we need is cool things to do in town instead of it being dead at 7 o'clock at night. So that's basically my story, and I think the majority of people would agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Fonte. Mr. Fonte, I have a question for you.
Yes, Tom.
So the Main Street Business District, was this map created and started from City Council and is being sent back to here?
Yes, like basically it was something that was discussed years ago. It just was stagnant. And then when we had PAVs issues, Starbucks, Acme, then the evolution of this started. So Pat and I started, and Tim, we started talking about, okay, what is really the purpose of Main Street Business District? Well, we have ordinances that stop us from doing everything, just like PAVs almost didn't come because we didn't have the parking arrangement set up properly. So we had to get creative or they would be gone and they wouldn't be here. And look at all the excitement. It's not a big money maker maybe, but look at the joy it brings to the faces of the kids and the adults and, you know, the adult drinks, the kid drinks, the ice cream. So what I'm saying is I think in general, you know, it was done in the sense of the smaller lots where there's setbacks, there's signage issues, parking issues. So it just gives you the opportunity that you can look on a case-by-case basis, and now you have wiggle room. Now you can make changes and accept certain things where you could never do before. So that was really the purpose why we did it.
Didn't the Main Street Business District used to go up in east and west on Apple Grove?
Well, I mean, basically the main corridor is what we were focused on, but it can expand a little bit either way, I'm sure. We just have to, you know, talk about it with council and submit it back to you guys.
Well, I respect everything the city council is doing for the city, but I'm not quite sure I understand how it started with city council and now it's coming backwards to the planning commission.
It's coming back to what?
Coming to us. I mean, it's not saying, I agree there should be public hearing, and I guess it is, but it's like it started, city council is recommending this to the planning commission to accept this or not accept it. And to be perfectly honest, I don't even have a map of it. It wasn't even sent to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I saw, where's that huge map?
Well, that's just being presented tonight.
Oh, well, I mean, I saw it, you know, I don't know, weeks ago. We've been talking about it for a long time. I don't know. I mean, you know, there's a lot of paperwork that comes and goes throughout the day. It's interesting to me because I'm interested in it. So I'm dialed in. That's why I'm here tonight. But I'm just saying in general.
Maps were sent to, I think we got an email 3 weeks ago from Mr. Diorio with the map attached. It was a small version and indicated if you want a larger version, contact him or the engineering department to pick up another one.
I mean,
and as far as council, you know, zone changes, zoning map amendments, zoning regulation amendments, you know, can be instigated by a property owner, council, planning commission. So really it's the process that's provided in the regulations to get something enacted.
I mean, Tom, you know, my thing is...
It's very clear that
I mean, something needs to be done. I mean, I sit up here and it's just very frustrating to have your hands tied. Now we're untying the hands so that we have, you guys have some flexibility.
I totally agree, something needs to be done, but I'm just saying I didn't get.
Maybe you just didn't get the email or,
I got
yeah.
deleted out of my system.
Yeah, it happens. It could be.
I haven't seen it.
You might go look in the spam filter, it'll be there. I mean, I surely looked at it, and I have a big map just like he has back there, but I went and got it. I went and asked him for it, because I couldn't see that small map well enough. And besides, I'm interested in understanding this, so I wanted to make sure I had the big map. And anybody can have it. He has a bunch of them.
Yeah, and I did email it personally to all board members. I provided an electronic copy to the chief, or to the building department. They, I believe you attached it to the email that went out, and then a copy of it was put in the packet. So I didn't get any email back that it was a bad address. Maybe we'll just, need to check those addresses to make sure. But.
And I think it's important to distinguish a change in how an area is zoned generally is very significant. You're changing a residential area to permit commercial or industrial in that area. That's a significant type of change. But adding the Main Street Business District is a minor change that authorizes some deference for the Planning Commission, and especially for the Zoning Board of Appeals, that looks at, well, it can provide variances when they meet certain criteria, but it has been brought up here in planning that council has enacted these certain rules for planning and zoning, and they're important because residents rely on those. They rely on those often when they're making the most significant purchase of their life, when they're perhaps buying a home or purchasing a business. But the change provided by the Main Street Business District is probably the most minor that you're going to see. If you look at the two documents I provided, 113701 intent and 1153.06 reduced standards for Main Street Business District, it says the intent for the Main Street Business District is that it maintains and promotes a central portion of Main Street as a core area for retail sales by permitting buildings to be close to the street and to one another, and by modifying the parking requirements for this district. So by not putting those hard, fast numbers, calculations, it offers you some discretion if you see that from the applicant. And 1153.06 is a little more specific, and it provides for reduced standards for Main Street business and stating in the recognition of the historic compact character of buildings in the Main Street Business District, as well as less efficient use of the floor area of those buildings, the Planning Commission may approve a development plan with a reduction in the requirements of the schedule in 1153.04, which is required off-street parking spaces. So this is specific just to parking, and it provides you with 4 criteria that it suggests that you look at if you think that because it's located in the Main Street District, because Paths is a perfect example in there, that it does have that reduced area and 2 other businesses to share that parking with, that if you had designated it in that Main Street area, it provides you with some discretion in looking at the number of parking spots that are available. And one other item to point out, I find it ironic that Mr. Osborne came here and somewhat belittled or looked at this Main Street Business District and made comments, kind of disparaging in its intent when this district was introduced in the sweeping legislation about 20 years ago when Mr. Osborne was on council, and he's the one that championed the Main Street Business District. So to come back up here again when 20 years has gone by and we've not taken advantage of this, but we've been talking about it for a couple years, to come up and now state that it's no longer necessary. It appears that it either should be implemented or simply removed if we're not going to utilize it.
Thank you.
Mr. Fletcher,
You've
Mr.
already
Fonte
spoken.
has a conflict of interest.
What?
He's a real estate agent, he has a something financial.
He's up. Sit down, please.
You have to talk one at a time.
Sit down.
And
Please.
Mr. Fox is incorrect.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wants to speak? Yes, sir.
Nick Pappas, 1321 Coons Road, North Canton. I am the owner of Pab's Creamery, the majority owner, and I applaud everything that you guys are putting forward tonight. Obviously, for reasons in the past, we almost lost Pab's by 20 feet based on the old previous rules and regulations that said that we couldn't do this. We couldn't take an old Isley shop and turn it back into an ice cream shop. Over 20 feet of parking. So if there's any other businesses that are out there that have plenty of potentials, that sees businesses or sees a vacant building that has been vacant for years and can put some life into it, please do whatever you can to change whatever outdated laws that are currently in place and make it possible for new business to come. I'm currently building a property in Cuyahoga Falls, and I know it's apples and oranges, that has no parking lots, that is incentivizing businesses for $40,000 to come into their vacant front street properties because there's nothing there. They can't get businesses to come in here. And here we had a business that hadn't been operational with a long-term tenant since 1996. And by that time, we put $180,000 in this business that we don't own just to put an ice cream shop in North Canton. You know what I mean? So please consider that listen, what you guys are doing I think is fantastic. These laws are outdated. I get the circumstances that obtain to change these things are not easy, but it goes a long way. So I appreciate it, and thank you for your support.
Thank you.
And one more thing that occurred to me, Mr. Sarah had mentioned that the rationale behind it is council knowing that this commission are the experts for planning and zoning and those types of rules. So that's why, as our president had stated, that there's three ways that something can come for a zoning amendment. It's either the property owner themselves, it may be initiated by the planning commission, or it may be initiated by council that puts it through a resolution asking the planning commission to take a look at this. This is what it sees, what it recommends, but it's offering that up and asking for recommendations from the planning commission. And I think it all started, if you recall, that Mr. Fry had pointed that out at a meeting and said, we have this Main Street Business District in our rules for planning, but we've never utilized it. And for a while we had talked about the corridors along Main Street, and I remember some discussion about perhaps including Apple Grove, but council in its efforts to get the ball rolling, Member Fonte had asked me how to get it started. we actually came in on a Sunday and sat here and looked over the map and talked about that to initiate this resolution, to bring it to planning, to get this, at least get the discussion started and see if we might be able to designate some areas that might be worthy of some relief.
All right, anyone else in the audience? Commission, comments, questions?
Yeah, question. When was the date that City Council approved the zoning map?
I'll have to go back and pull it up. Take me a minute.
Yeah, I'd like to know that,
Electronic
please.
search. Sure.
Other questions or comments? Upon our action tonight, whatever it may be, it then is forwarded to back to City Council to have a public hearing and ultimately adopt an ordinance.
Mr. Fleckner, I'm having trouble hearing.
Okay. All right. Once we take action, whatever it may be, this item will then go back to City Council for another public hearing and their adoption of an ordinance to accept or reject it. No other questions? Yeah, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to say, with this change with the Main Street District, it does allow developers more choice in designing buildings. They are allowed up to 70% of the lot to put a building. Some of these buildings cannot be repurposed. They're just too old. Doing a cost analysis on buildings to try to repurpose, sometimes it's just easier to tear it down and start brand new. Once they tear the building down without this district, that lot becomes a vacant lot that has asphalt, or we're just gonna, cut the grass, which takes away from our purpose of bringing businesses in, being more business friendly, seeing the city grow and not become stagnant. And that district allows, there's gives and takes, but there's a lot more that they get for having those small lots or investing in them with this change of adopting, this Main Street Business District. So it's very, very important that it's approved and moved forward and implemented so that we can get businesses. We don't look at vacant lots and, becomes stagnant growth on your main street, which is, your biggest asset, along with your, outside of your parks, of course, but I mean, talking business-wise, it's a great asset, and we should utilize it and allow the builders, remodelers, real estate agents, or whomever involved in businesses, that flexibility to sell, buy, grow, build, and provide opportunities for our residents to visit, to eat, buy shoes, shop, nails, whatever, get their shoes repaired. It's important, I think, that it does get approved and by this commission, and I know council is behind it 100%. Thank you.
Thanks. Peter, what specific date are you looking for on the map?
I want to know from the time that council heard that to today to see if it undoes anything, if it negates anything that we did in the past. And are we open ourselves to risk from past decisions? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Okay. Yeah, because, these maps are, and Mr. Graham can probably clarify, but these maps are periodically changed by the engineering department.
I understand.
The minute, I don't think you change it immediate, or do you change it immediately upon a zone change occurring? Do you revise and update the map?
Right, we try to keep up with any changes.
So it's current.
And then document said change.
Right. So there, at this point, there would be no map that was approved that designated, as Mr. DeRorio pointed out, in the beginning that designated what is part of the Main Street Business District. I know there've been discussions as, I think Mr. Fox has indicated that, you know, when Gary Fry was here, he gave us a list of things he wanted, and that being one of them.
I remember that meeting.
Yeah, and sign ordinance. But there would have been a time when council would have had discussions and adopted the resolution to create.
Okay. Less than a year ago.
Okay, so this is,
13 November 2017.
yep. So that's where we are today, so, if there's no other discussion from the commission, is there a motion?
I'd move that we accept the map as presented and pass it back to City Council for their public hearing and their subsequent approval. For their subsequent hearing and approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Bolus?
Yes.
Mr. Fleckner?
Yes.
Mr. McLeister?
Yes.
Thank you. Now moving down to the next item on the agenda, which would be an item that was tabled at the August 1st meeting of Planning Commission. Proposed site plan for 624 South Main Street, Lot 58. Is there a representative for that plan?
Mr. Chairman, if I note, there'll be two parts to this. One is for the plan, and then for the outside dining, it's a conditional use. That part is an adjudication hearing, and that's when we'll ask our court reporter to swear in those that wish to offer evidence in favor or against the conditional use permit.
Let me, if I might bring something up at this point, we have one other item, or two other items, and I apologize to those proponents. Is there any way we could move one or both of those ahead of this? I think this might, with it being broken into two, if you gentlemen don't object, I would go into our second and third items, which
Sure, no objection.
hopefully would take less time. I appreciate your support. Next item on the agenda then would be a proposed site plan for 365 Wise Avenue from the North Canton City Schools for a permanent bleachers and press box at the varsity softball field. If you come forward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Fleckner. Todd Henney, North Canton City Schools. Todd Henney, North Canton City Schools. In summary, this proposal would take the existing portable bleachers we've had for the 8 years since the creation of the softball fields, turn that into pretty similar permanent bleachers on a cement pad, and the addition of a press box, fairly small press box at the top there.
Did we change the video, please? Thank you.
Yeah, you keep scrolling down. Thank you.
What's the capacity of the seating? cost to the city?
I believe it's in the low 400s. I don't have that info right here.
Wait a minute, it says 245 on it.
245, yes.
Sorry.
Keep scrolling down. That's the picture, but the bottom half of that.
This picture?
Yeah, and freeze right there.
Okay, John, any comment? You have anything further?
No,
Mr.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we just wish that they have brought their building plans in. We have reviewed them. They have a few corrections to make, but we do wish to have this approved by the Planning Commission so they would move forward with their project. Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this? Questions and comments from the commission? And this is a site plan approval, final
Yes.
site plan approval.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the plan as submitted by the City of North Canton Schools.
Is there a
Second.
Any further questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. McLeister?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Volos?
Yes.
And Mr. Fleckner?
Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, let's, I understand that, all right, the next would be the zoning amendment for parcel 9207358, outlot 53, currently zoned P&I, request to be rezoned R50.
I believe there's been a request made to table this. If the commission would entertain that. I believe the issue is perhaps an administrative error that perhaps a small portion of the map, when it may have, this parcel included in an area that may have been a zoning change from R70 to Parks and Institution, that the current map we have may be incorrect in that there are a handful of parcels that, although zoned R70, the map reflects that they're P&I. And what we're involved in right now is having our building department certifying that the properties are indeed R70, and what we'll do is correct the map. I believe the zoning has remained the change. In fact, I checked.
But I believe the zoning.
I believe the zoning wasn't actually changed. I think the most important part, if I was a homeowner or property owner there, is how it is zoned by the county. And I did confirm that all the residential properties do indeed reflect that they are residential properties. And so the taxes that they would pay, there's not going to be any change in that for us to simply correct that, perhaps that misstep on the zoning map. And once we verify those, we'll update the map and certainly notify all of those residents. And perhaps many of those were simply not aware that the map incorrectly identified those couple parcels as Parks and Institutions instead of R70. We had a panel member that was alert and contacted and brought that to our attention, and initially thought that it would require a zoning change. And I'm of the mind that if this is an administrative error, should be no cost to anyone to correct that error. We will ferret those things out and figure out what occurred. I do have a map from 2000, and they're all R70. I found the closest to that is a 2005, and it does indeed include some of those that have that P&I designation, so we're gonna track that down and figure out what happened between 2000 and 2005 and make that correction, and that's the reason we're asking to table it. I don't believe there's any effort that should come from this commission to resolve it.
Is there a motion?
I would make a motion to table it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Fleckner?
Yes.
Mr. Rollis?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Pleister?
Abstain.
Okay, now, gentlemen, we're back on the South Main Street parcel. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I need to excuse myself since I own property within the 200 feet area.
Okay. It's understandable and appreciate your consideration. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Peter Young, 700 through 708 South Main Street, and landlord for Pavs. Nick Pappas, you've already met. And we're prospective buyers of 624 South Main Street, the property adjacent with the overflow parking, with my brother-in-law, Joe Wagner.
All right, any changes, what you submitted to us back in August?
No changes, but just more detail that the commissioners requested at the last meeting. So on the new and more detailed map, we, first of all, on the proposed upgraded parking area on Baker Court, we accurately reflected where the retaining wall would be, and we also reflected the bumper guards and bumper guards, wheel bumper guards. So, as you note on the new map, the retaining, we'll have to take a little bit of the hill, build into the hill a little bit to provide the required circular space for cars backing out. And we wanted to minimize, obviously, that hill to preserve as much of the soft bank for drainage purposes as possible. So we were able to do that, and the retaining wall would be about 105 feet in length, and the maximum height would be 20 inches. So it would be relatively minor change. And it would be built out of either concrete block or sandstone block. And we've provided the commissioners with pictures of what both look like. The map also includes the map also includes the location of the current street light, which illuminates the area. I pulled in at 2 o'clock this morning, and almost bright as day. So, and that is, I think that's all that we updated in terms of the map for the overflow parking area. And then the commissioners also asked for more detail on PAV's proposed outdoor patio dining area.
Question, maybe, John, you might clarify this. Is this being submitted as a preliminary or a final development plan?
Well, it's conceptual and final at the same time.
Okay.
This is the concept they're looking at. It's final, what it'll be, and the engineering department and building department will work out the details for the construction aspect of them.
That's fine. Anyone from the audience have questions or comments?
I do not have it electronically.
We do not have that. Do you have one you put on the table?
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. From the very start of this, a year ago, I've been in total opposition. The property does not have adequate parking. Now, they presented a license to you to have overflow parking next door. and they flip-flop back and forth, calling it a license, calling it a lease. A license. A license can be revoked. Properly called a revocable license. Here's a copy of the license right here.
Say again, property, a license can be revoked.
Can be revoked. The proper name for it is a revocable license. I will have these handouts for you. Page 2, it says, in the event the additional parking is no longer required by 708 South Main, either party has a right to terminate this license with written notice to the other party. So, as far as I'm concerned, the license, revocable license, isn't worth the paper it's printed on. It can go away tomorrow, and you will not have adequate parking, and that was the basis for the approval a year ago. I have some handouts here describing what a difference is between a lease and a license, because they kept interchanging terminology last year. Mr. McClainser was trying to hone in on this last year, and ultimately, Mr. Fry, who was the city's economic development director, and the city's law director started calling it a lease themselves. The property of the gas station next door that is supposedly to be used for the overflow parking hasn't changed ownership since 2004. So they don't even own the next door property. Now, to get back to what was just said, a 20-inch little stone wall. And if you look at the diagram, you barely have room to back out of your parking stall. 20 inches is the perfect height to back right into that wall. You would have to have a much higher retaining wall, much farther back into the embankment to have adequate ingress and egress. They've been there for a year. They have overflow parking next door. Is it hard surface? No. And if you put in hard surface, what are you going to do about drainage? Run it all out there in the alley and let it run down into the residential homes that are right behind there? You know, there's a reason why properties suddenly no longer meet the needs of business. Are we going to go to the all ends of the earth to keep this property in play for business use? They become opportunities for somebody else who has bigger plans, who can remedy the site for a higher and better use. You know, this whole decision last year and continuing is sentimentality and politics. For the life of me, I can't understand why Pavs, the owners, didn't find a better business setting, a better piece of property. Frankly, both properties should be cleared. And part of the current Pavs property would allow El Recon to expand their parking, because they need more parking. They're using adjoining property for parking. So it's not government's responsibility to continue to relax requirements to keep these properties in play. Same thing with this Main Street Business District. They're all old homes, and as Mr. Steigall just brought up, you'd be better off to clear them. But we also need to keep in mind that these properties are very close to residential. We know the next step, if you guys approve all this, they're going to come back again and they want to vacate the alley that splits these two properties. So I don't know why this is continuing. The property is highly unsuitable for the ingress and egress for the traffic that they would hope to generate. So that's enough. I have the handouts here for you.
had your 3 minutes, thank you.
Watch, you got a conflict of interest?
Take your seat.
No, I don't have a conflict.
Take your seat.
Mr. Fleckner is chairing the meeting.
Yes.
Take your seat, sir.
Okay, so Dominic Fonte again, 965 Fair Oaks Avenue Southwest. I'm a real estate agent. I don't really sell commercial real estate at all. I'm interested in Main Street Business District, and this is the reason why, is because what Chuck said. You know, you have this older real estate, we're trying to get a purpose there, and it's not just Pavs, it's other businesses too. Not everybody can afford to level the ground and start from ground zero. You know, small businesses, entrepreneurs are trying to make things happen. And small communities like ours like that kind of thing. It's a change. Change is difficult. It's just like when I grew up when I was a kid. We had 7 people with 1 car. You know, 1 car garage, 1 car was acceptable. The game has changed. Things are changing. We need to change with the times. If the Main Street Business District from '03 would have been in effect, this would be a moot point anyhow. So creatively, they came up with a way to talk to the neighbor. Unfortunately, the neighbor doesn't own the property anymore, or he does, but it's going to be hopefully owned by these new people, and they'll have more room to do what they want to do. So I would want to say the Main Street Business District, there's no conflict here. I just want to see things move forward. That's why I'm here, trying to help move things forward. And so now we have the tools. And lease agreement, license agreement, who knows? I don't really understand all that. That's the lawyer's department. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Rebecca Tack of TRE Properties, 616 South Main Street. I am just curious if I could ask them, just looking at this map here for the first time tonight, we are located next door to the old garage here, the old gas station. And I'm just curious, I doubt you're doing anything with the hill as far as moving north towards our property? I don't believe so. I just wanted to make sure. I can see where you have your retaining wall. I just wanted to make sure that any part of that really wasn't being knocked down, per se. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Open it up to, well, let me make a couple comments. Three things that I see. Your 2 spaces that are at the north end, that won't work. You're backing out. You've got the driveway, a means of ingress and egress here. Those spaces will be backing into vehicles coming on.
Right. Yeah, we understand that as of this afternoon. So we understand that those 2 spaces, there's not enough room to fit within the city's parallel parking rules. Having said that, even if we cut the parking down to 48 spaces, we'd still have more than enough to accommodate the overflow parking requirements.
Right. Yeah, stay there because maybe some of that. Second one, you're parking along Baker Court with the 90-degree parking and 14-foot aisleway. I did my own independence. I have a parking spot in my driveway at home, and it takes me, and this is with a pickup truck, takes me 20 feet to back out, or no, 18 to back out, 21 feet to pull out of a 90-degree parking. So I think that aisleway needs to be in compliance with our regulations, which I think John can let you know. The third thing would be, are you going to retain that driveway at the south end of the current business where people would be pulling directly into the proposed outside seating area?
Mr. Chairman, if I might address that question, I've asked that the applicant enclose that area as a matter of public safety.
Yeah, I just want.
I'm sorry, which area was that?
The area that is the south driveway
Pulling directly into the.
pulling directly into the building.
Right here. Yeah, this right here. Yeah, that's currently a drop curve
And the reason.
people are coming in and out of there now.
And the reason is that we were looking at is that, you know, Pabs is wildly popular, and I don't know if you've been down there, but, you know, there are times when, you know, the people are lined up around the corner to get into the building to get what they serve there. And so I was concerned about them assembling in the El Rincon parking lot, because that's immediately adjacent. So I've asked that they enclose that, extend the brick wall that the city installed there. I've indicated we have sandstone caps available that could be used. And then from the end of that brick wall, that a wrought iron style fence run from that to the building to enclose that area and keep their patrons in a better environment. And if they would do that, then the city would, you know, address the curb that's existingly cut down. We could, as we're doing some other things, we could remedy that. But that was something that was on our mind, and I had addressed to them. I wanted to make sure that that you got the position from the administration that we were looking at that, and we've asked them to do that.
Thank you. Go ahead. Those were the three issues I had.
Okay, perfect. I have a number of concerns as well. And first, I want to preface by saying, you know, my family has been to Pavs many times. We certainly want to see you guys succeed. But like I said, I do have some concerns, and I think you hit on one of them, Mr. Fleckner. It's this turnaround in the back. And then I'm going to couple with that, and I think we've identified that 22 feet is code. My concern is that as you back that retaining wall up, you're talking a significantly taller wall other than 20 inches. You're probably getting closer to, as Mr. Osborne said, I've been there several times, including this afternoon. You're talking probably closer to 5 or 6 feet, because that you have 20 feet for the parking stall plus another 22 feet. That puts you back to about the crest of the hill. So it is going to be a significantly taller retaining wall. And I will note, I don't know if this is maybe a mistake, but this has changed since the last drawings that we had. The last drawing actually showed it a much narrower strip of grass compared to this one here.
Right.
So that was a concern that I have, and I think it needs to be changed. Let's see. The other one is we had talked about the parking spots in the back, and I guess I have a question about the total number of parking spots. The spots directly behind the building, there are 4 spots listed. Those are not to code. They are not 10 feet wide. You have space for 3 of them, but 4 are listed. And along with that, I counted this 3 times. Where's my notes? I counted 1 less parking spot. So I guess I'm concerned, what is the actual requirement? John, do we have the actual required number of parking spots that they are required to have? And are we still within it, even with the overflow?
They well exceed.
Okay, and that's what I thought.
Well exceed.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Even if you remove the four at that
Right.
apartment, they still exceed what they need.
Yeah, those are the bulk of my concerns, just the retaining wall where it's listed
Right.
on here is not adequate, and then the 4 spots in the back. The other question I have is talking about the actual material for the lot. And again, I'm not an industry professional. When you're talking the recycled asphalt, are we talking, is this going to be, you know, heated and rolled such as like any asphalt parking is, or are you just envisioning backing the dump truck up and spreading it out?
Right. Yes. I'll go back to the first question or first concern about the amount of space. Right. Yeah, no problem. Actually, the city code is 14 feet for the circulation aisle. So
No, I think you're incorrect.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, you're incorrect.
Yeah, you need to get with John, and
sure.
he'll show you. You know, that could be reduced if you put angle parking there.
Not by much, though, I don't believe.
Yes, well, whatever. But I think that's an issue that would be ultimately approved by building department and engineering.
Sure.
And
right.
Yeah.
No, we're happy to work with John and his team.
He has the drawings that that show what that aisle width.
I agree, 14 feet would be tight. It's,
Yeah,
it's
you
what
just
it's
can't-
what our engineers came up with from the code, but in any event, we'll work with John on that.
Yeah.
The one reason why we actually wanted it as tight as the code would like it, though, is because the more soft bank you preserve,
Right.
the more, better it looks, less expensive, but mainly it minimizes drainage issues. So you want that green bank, as much of the green bank as possible. It's also a one-way, the way it's designed, it's one way in, one way out, so that hopefully would.
Control the one-way better with an angled parking.
Yeah, absolutely, and actually, that actually is.
And if you've got more than enough parking,
Right, that's a good idea.
and you're losing those two
Right.
and maybe one or two there.
Right.
The width of the
Wouldn't be a
aisle-
problem.
I apologize, I keep talking over you, I apologize. The width of the aisle goes down to 18 feet per code if you have a 45-degree parking.
Say
So-
that
Yes.
again, Jamie.
I'm sorry, the width of the aisle required by code goes down to 18 feet if you have 45-degree parking.
Right.
So, something to consider.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think you worked with John and talked with him about doing the angle parking, and they did that just earlier today or yesterday on that.
And our objective is the same as yours. We want to make sure that it's safe coming in and out, obviously, and also that to the extent that we can maximize the green bank, all the better for everybody. And then to your question about the recycled asphalt pavement, that is, it's not like heated and poured and molten. It's typically ground, and it is, and then it's spread and then rolled. But the recycled asphalt retains enough of the tar from the original asphalt to bind. But the advantage of it is, so it looks good. It looks like I sent you a picture of it. It looks good, but the advantage for this lot, for this purpose, is that it's much more permeable than concrete or virgin asphalt.
And then I guess I would direct a question to Mr. Steigall or Mr. Graham. Does a hard surface such as that meet our requirements for a parking lot? And I guess the second question along with that would be, is how does that stand up over time? I mean, to me, it sounds like something that could be, I don't want to call it flimsy, but it sounds like something that might not hold up over more than a couple years maybe for a driveway for the picture you sent us, but not for a parking lot.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to answer your question.
One of the things our office will definitely want to take a hard look at is the specifications. Obviously, we like the idea of the porous type pavement with the houses and garages across Baker Court, run off Bisbee Street, so if we can lessen the aisle or make the aisle wider and then keep as much of that green space and bank with a retaining wall behind it to keep that runoff coefficient of the grass, and then a permeable pavement of some sort. But yeah, I mean, there is some sacrifice with maintenance, something they're gonna have to maintain. The snow plows will grab it, but then again, how often is an overflow lot gonna be used in the off-season?
Right.
But all things that, we'll work with the applicant.
But again, that material would be approvable by the city?
Right, it's not something that's dusty or, we wouldn't want a gravel lot there, so when traffic pulls in, folks next door have the windows open, that'd be very inconsiderate. So yeah, we would take a look at that, but yes, I think we could come to some sort of agreement. I've seen that a lot of zoos, whatnot, have permeable pavements just for that environmentally friendly reason. So work with them and come up with something that we can live with.
After I heard our contractor's recommendation for it, I had never heard of recycled asphalt pavement, so I did more research and learned a lot more than I ever thought I would. But there is quite a bit of Federal Highway Administration studies on recycled asphalt, and it is considered a legitimate hard surface for roads. It's stripeable, but as Rob said, it's more permeable than virgin asphalt or concrete.
Okay, perfect. I think those are all of my questions on the parking.
Yeah, Peter.
So, Mr. Young, I have a question. In your opening comments, you said something about that you are considering buying the adjacent property. Did I hear you correctly?
Correct. It's under contract for us to purchase the property, so the license issue goes away, essentially.
Okay, and at that point, if you are the owner, what would be your plans for the existing structure?
That's a good question. We've initiated discussions with the city about what they would like it to be used for. I think there's a consensus that probably not a auto shop or a used car lot or something like that. So we're looking at various options that we'll bring back to the Planning Commission that enhance the whole area and sort of augment what has become a nice little, between Pavs and El Rincon, a nice little destination for city residents.
So, I mean, if you are the owner of it, would you consider as one of those options to demolish the existing structure and then extend the parking throughout the entire site?
Our preference would not be to do that. We would definitely rehab if we don't demolish it, we would definitely rehab it. And because we've looked at a lot of former gas stations that have been rehabbed and modernized, and if you do it right, there's a really classic retro look you can get that fits in with any number of concepts that we're looking at. Almost certainly we'd take the portico chair down, and there's a lot of work that has to be done on that building to rehabilitate it, but we think it can be done. It's a nice space, but we think it can be done in a way that is very attractive.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Is there a motion?
Question.
Yes.
If there is a motion, it's got to be unanimous, right? In order for this to pass, because there's only
Correct.
3 of the 5 of us here,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Does the applicant want us to, does the applicant want to take that risk, or is it,
What?
or do you want to wait for more people to be on the commission? I offer that.
Is there a reason not to grant them the conceptual approval to move forward with the parking?
Well, is this conceptual or
I
final?
mean,
I thought this
we
was final.
could
Well, I mean-
approve a preliminary.
Say again?
We could approve it, a preliminary plat, and then come back with basically the same as a final. But I don't know what that's gaining. Well,
Yeah. And so any motion that would be made would be contingent on some of the recommended changes by the other commission members? Or are they asking us to approve the plan that's been submitted?
well, as submitted with modifications, we've requested in what the building and superintendent building and the engineer will have, their final approval.
So I'm going to make a motion to approve the plan as submitted, subject to the final approval of the engineering department and the building department, specifically addressing the parking along Baker Court. And
Add in this too?
and the parking spaces to the east of the existing building. There's 4 parking spaces in the back.
And I will second that motion with those required,
Well, we also have the drive approach off of Main Street and the parking.
Yeah, so my
Well,
my
I think if you
motion
talk parking,
considers
that
those 2 items. If you vote,
Rob and John are well aware of the issues.
well, I just wanted,
Yeah.
for the record, I want to make sure we're all clear.
Yeah, if you want to
All right?
have your motion contain those 4 items.
Okay, so
yeah,
let's
that'd
just
be
review
fine.
what those are again. So before I restate my motion, or I have to amend
All
my
right.
motion.
No.
Since it was seconded, you
It was
prob-
seconded, so.
yeah, so you probably
so
should.
I'd be asked if I want to make an amendment, right?
Yeah. So, you're, yeah. Let me get where'd my drawing go? All right. So, you indicated the Baker Court, the 4 spaces to the rear of the existing building, the 2 spaces to the north end of the former gas station.
And
2 parking spaces north, at the north end of the property, adjacent property, and the drive approach in front, the ingress and egress in front of the existing building. Eliminated. I think that,
To prevent people from coming in.
All right. I will accept those items.
so that would be an amendment.
Yeah.
And I'll second that motion.
So we're voting on the amendment.
You're voting on the amended motion.
Right.
Well, we gotta vote for the amendment, then we vote for the motion as
I'm willing,
amended.
I'm willing to make a change to my motion.
Well, yeah, you're
Final
amending the original motion,
Okay.
so we're gonna vote on that amendment.
Okay.
Correct, Tim?
Yes, sir.
Roll call, please.
Mr. McClister?
Yes.
Mr. Volus?
Yes.
Mr. Fleckner?
Yes. Now we're voting on the motion as amended. Approval as amended, with 4 items, as well as the engineering and building department approvals. Any further questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Volus?
Yes.
Mr. McClister?
Yes.
And Mr. Fleckner?
Yes. Okay, that is all I have on the agenda.
We got conditional use.
Conditional use
Oh.
adjudication hearing.
Yeah, you're right.
Fun starts.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. No, that's fine.
All right, now we are looking at the conditional use of 624 South Main Street, Lot 58, for outdoor seating.
And would the court reporter swear in anyone that wishes to offer testimony, evidence for the
Okay,
adjudication hearing? Have them sworn in?
All right. Pardon? Okay. All right, 708 South Main Street. But it's lot 58. So, regardless of what the address is. Pardon? Lot 3? Lot 3? Lot 330. Okay. Is there anything the proponents want to add on the outdoor seating?
Haven't been sworn in yet.
We'll want to have the court reporter swear in anyone that's going to offer testimony for
Well,
evidence.
Even the,
Yes, sir.
yes,
Everyone.
okay,
Everyone
okay,
that offers.
all right.
Yes, sir.
you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you.
Once again, Nick Pappas, 1321 Coons Road. I am the majority owner of Pappas Creamery, and I am asking to extend our outdoor seating permit, or outdoor seating, by adding an additional 16 outdoor seats. That is well within our requirements of our 25% occupancy, total occupancy, which is 150 for that building. So it goes on not seated occupancy, it goes on total occupancy as per our architect has explained. And what we're looking to do is just add take away 6 parking spaces and add 6 benches for people to sit outside. We would provide fencing, same fencing that we have for our other locations, which is provided by Acme Fence. It would be aluminum fencing all around, so it would be gated. And it would also liaise with the requirements by the state liquor license, because we do have liquor permits. That's already been submitted to our attorney, as well as to Faye McCallahan, who is the inspector for this region for the liquor, and as long as for the liquor, and as long as our signage and egress and degress is compliable to what our record shows, then we would have no issue by the state. So, with further ado, I will happy to answer any questions.
What is your seating capacity?
Seated capacity?
Yes.
Is 56.
56? Okay. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fox, we're not allowed to exceed 25% of the restaurant's seating capacity, is that correct?
You're correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, you said again 56?
56, but again, from our understanding, it's the building occupancy, not the seated occupancy. So, because you have people that are capable of standing in your facility. So, seated occupancy and total occupancy was a different calculation.
I'm going by what I have in front of me, which I'm assuming, which I don't know what code this is, 114507, supplemental regulations for certain uses, and it says the outside seating capacity shall not exceed 25% of restaurant seating capacity.
Well, if that is the case, then we would. If that is the case, and this is, I'm not doing this by my own homework. I'm doing it by our architect, who is done all the work for Acme's around here. So I apologize if that information is wrong. That's what they provided for us. So whatever the code is, we would obviously follow the code to what we are allowed to do, but we would still use the same square footage, whether it's seated or not. We would still want the same square footage for that area.
John, could you clarify that issue?
It's what the well, there's a conflict between our zoning and the building code. The building code allows more people to, based on the occupancy, not only of the building, but of the area or space that is being proposed. Our zoning code changes that to reflect different capacity. So I'm not sure which number the applicant is getting his numbers from, if they're using the building code or.
So we're going from what we submitted in our building plans, whatever our occupancy, our building occupancy allows is 25% of that. So whatever our architectural plans submitted, it's whatever that is.
And if you look at 115304 C2, the closest thing that describes my understanding is how PABS operates is it's a counter service where folks order, they receive it, and then they sit down. And it's not a standalone building. You have other buildings, so it's part of a shopping center. So the minimum parking spaces under that requirement is 10, or 1 space per 50 square feet of floor area, whichever is greater.
And the floor area would be greater.
Yes.
That's parking, though.
Yeah, parking.
We're talking about outdoor seating.
We're talking about seating.
Well,
yeah.
But, I guess what I would offer to the commission, if we look at those percentages, if you take 25% of 56, I think you come up to 14.
Right.
If you take 20% of 56, you come up, I guess, 10.8, round it to 11, I guess. So you're looking at 3 seats is that really they're in the Main Street Business District, and that's the whole point. I mean, does the additional 3 seats constitute, some sort of change of character to the area that we wouldn't want that to happen? I mean, this is what I think, where you have that flexibility. We're not looking at numbers that we're talking about 80 people versus 12 people. We're talking the difference between 11 and 14.
And just to add, as an operation, this is a safety issue more than anything else. We are having currently on our hot summer nights, people just standing in the parking lot because there's nowhere else to sit inside. So where you got customers coming in, kids with them, parking in your patio, if you can contain them in a protected area, I mean, again, this is not so much seated capacity, this is protected capacity that I'm keen on. So whether or not it's 16 or 13 or 36, it's the area of which I would like to have as a patio space.
Sure, and I certainly agree with the need for it. I just want to make sure that, what I vote on is within the letter of the law. That's, why I'm asking. So I guess for further clarification, what is the code that we would go by to come up with this calculation? Because, I'd be inclined to say that it'd be great for him to have the 24 seats, but if we can't allow that, then I don't see how we could vote for that.
Well, I think you're asking for 14.
Or 24. That's what I have on my paper.
25% of
I'll take whatever you guys give me.
2? No.
Let's start from there.
Where are you getting the 24?
I have a sheet of paper right here that says that they are looking for, the seating will consist of 4 hex recycled plastic picnic tables, 46-inch, and apparently it will be made out of cedar, and they will seat 6 per table for a total occupancy of 24. That was on
That's correct.
This sheet.
Yeah, that was my work. It wasn't by my architect, but it was done by me. So it's definitely, it's whatever you allow. I'm not asking for
Yeah,
that
that's
exact amount.
Ultimately, the decision of the building department. Okay, yes, sir.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. I'm disappointed in the city engineer as far as the paving for the parking lot. You got to have a base. I don't care whether you're putting down concrete or asphalt. This parking lot surface is not going to last one season.
Excuse me, we're not talking.
I knew you were going to do this, Mr. Fleckner.
We're not talking about parking lot.
We're talking about the whole overall plan here.
No, that was the last issue. We're talking about the outdoor seating.
And that wasn't covered, a base for the parking lot surface.
It was.
That's the other side.
This has been the biggest circus I have ever seen in my life.
That's all, well.
Nobody wants to stand up for your own laws.
If you want to deal with the issue we're discussing, it is the outdoor seating.
Mr. Fleckner, I have seen you up here for 18 years. You have never been friendly with anybody who comes up here.
Chairman,
I take exception to that.
This has been a circus. Nobody wants to stand up for their laws. You've basically approved this and just going to hand it over to them.
Please
and hope that they do what they're supposed to do.
Please address the issue that we're discussing, and it's the outdoor seating.
This is the saddest thing of government I have ever witnessed in my life.
Well, you used to be a part of it.
Not like this, Mr.
Please.
It was worse. All right. No one else?
They're the only 2 that were sworn in.
So, other questions of the commission?
None for me.
I guess I was just waiting for a clarification on our calculation over there. Because I wonder if this has to go to a variance if they want that 24.
Say again.
I wonder if it has, I apologize. I wonder if it has to go to if this has to be a variance from the ZBA if they're looking for 24 seats.
Can we also ask the applicant to amend their request to what's permissible under the current zoning?
I think he sort of alluded to that.
Yeah, well, let's make it clear.
Yeah, you want to get that on record, please?
I amend the request to whatever we're allowed.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
Real quick, I guess I just do have another question. So if we are leaving the square footage the same, 800 square feet, according to this sheet, and we amend it to whatever's permitted by code, which let's just say it's 4, again, I know these are upstanding gentlemen, but what happens as more picnic tables show up? Does that create then a problem to us? Do we then need to reduce the size of the patio, which I agree is probably not in the best interest of them, but.
Well, to increase the size of the patio would require a building permit. That's being controlled by the building department.
The building department would be responsible for enforcing the number of seats that out there. It's pretty clear if the seats are more than established, that it's their responsibility to rectify that. And if this is altered, perhaps later on, once council has an opportunity with the Main Street Business District, it could come back and perhaps have that area expanded.
Mm-hmm.
So just to be clear, we're not asking him to change the size of the patio, just the seating that's permissible.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right, that's fine.
Is there a motion?
Well, I guess I'm still maybe I'm belaboring the point, and I apologize if I am. What is the code that we're going by to establish? And again, I realize that we're gonna go whatever the maximum is. I'm just, at this point, more curious than anything, how many seats?
That's
Just let them-
up to the building department. We don't control that.
25% of the seating capacity,
Okay,
so 14.
14, okay.
That's it.
I would move that we approve the outdoor seating, provided that the seating capacity falls in line with city code.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McLeister,
Yes.
Mr. Bolus,
Yes.
and Mr. Fleckner.
Yes. All right, now, nothing else on the agenda. Anything in the works for next month? See anything coming down the line, any discussions?
Not that I know of at this time.
Potentially the tabled item.
Pardon?
Potentially the tabled item.
Oh, yeah, that could, so we'd be looking October 3rd or 10th? So,
That should be available.
if and when that is resolved, we'll get an email as to availability. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before you do, is Mr. Sarah still here?
Yeah, he is.
He should be asked to come back.
Bring him
Maybe.
back. But he actually wasn't able to come back in until that just finished.
Yeah,
So
right.
conditional use still pertained to him.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Just for the final roll call to end the meeting.
I'm sorry. We're done.
Thank you.
We may have, if the item that was tabled potentially could be back in October, the 3rd or the 10th meeting date.
That's fine with me.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Meeting's
Thank
adjourned.
you.
Thank you.
You missed this by word. You missed this by word.
We have a second.
No, I didn't.
I want to get
I missed you, Gil.
Yeah, hey, those,